Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Just a second, sir. Hello, everyone. I'm Good Simran Singh, Program Associate Spare India. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to today's session on building resilience, understanding, mitigating earthquake risk. And as we all know, earthquake can be dangerous, but with the right preparation, we can reduce the damage and keep people safe. And today, our expert will share insight on how to prepare and build safer community. And now I would like to invite moderator of the day, Krupa Lakshmi. Welcome, Krupa. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Simran. Am I audible?
Yes, please.
Hello, everyone. I am Kripa. I'm a program associate at Sphere India. I'll be the moderator for today's session on building resilience, understanding, and mitigating earthquake risk. So, we've been hearing a lot of earthquake news over the past few weeks around the NCR region, Nepal, and how it's threatening Siliguri till Bihar. And so we discussed about it. Earthquakes are one of the most devastating natural disasters, which can cause destruction in a matter of a few seconds. India is particularly vulnerable because more than 59% of its land area is labeled as moderate to severe earthquake prone. The seismic vulnerability stems from its unique geological positioning, which I am pretty sure the experts will discuss more about. But I'm just stating the facts here. The Indian plate is colliding into the Eurasian plate at an average rate of 47 millimeter per year, which generates immense pressure along the fault lines. This ongoing tectonic movements make the entire Himalayan region prone, and looks like it can go up to a magnitude of 8 or higher, and even the peninsular region is at risk. Also, on the hand, looking at the rapid urbanization, population density, and unplanned development, the risk posed by earthquake is very compound, and the impacts can be, however, be significantly reduced through a combination of scientific understanding, structural safety measures, community preparedness, and robust policy frameworks. This session, the aim is to delve into the seismological science behind it and to explore risk mitigation strategies and how collaboration across science, technology, governance, and academic institutions can strengthen resilience against future seismic events. So, with that being said, I would like to take the honor of introducing the first speaker of today's session, Dr. Hari Kumar. Dr. Hari Kumar sir is a civil engineer with over 34 years of experience in safe shelter, disaster risk management, and earthquake risk reduction. As the regional coordinator for South Asia at Geohazards International now, he leads initiatives in India, Nepal, Bhutan, and Myanmar, strengthening disaster resilience through capacity building, policy support, and community awareness. Sir has coordinated key programs such as the Delhi Earthquake Safety Initiative for Lifetime Building and disaster risk reduction efforts in Aizawl, Mizoram, which influenced government policies. This work has enhanced the safety of health facilities, schools, and communities through strategic planning and evidence-based approaches. Previously, Sir has managed the earthquake risk reduction projects from the Government of India and UNDP, including the Urban Earthquake Vulnerability Reduction Program and National Capacity Building Program for Engineers and Architects. He has contributed to NDMA's task force on landslide risk management and technical committees on earthquake risk assessment. Dr. Kumar was part of reconnaissance following the 2015 Nepal earthquake and 2013 Doda earthquake, assessing the impact on health facilities and schools. With a PhD in risk mitigation planning, Sir has worked into very critical structures, and today he is here to talk us through the understanding earthquake risk and the seismic hazard and risk mapping. What is it, sir?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, since we have very limited time, so I'm just quickly delving into my part of the topic because I hope you can hear and see me and see my screen.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Hari Kumar. I work for Geohazards International. And because this workshop is a very, very timely workshop. Actually, earthquake workshops are timely all the time. It doesn't need a small shaking in Delhi to remind us of the importance of, looking at reducing earthquake risk. So this is timely anyway, and because we are looking at understanding and mitigating earthquake risk, I'll quickly talk about the understanding risk part. So, as I mentioned, I work for Geohazards International. We are an international organization with South Asia regional office in Delhi. We work before disasters happen. So we work on the mainly on the mitigation and the preparedness sides, and always working before disasters and connecting with local people, understanding the social context, and working closely with the communities we work with. We also have a sister organization, Geohazard Society, which is based in Delhi as well. We share offices. So main focus is on schools and hospitals, as um, uh, my colleague was introducing. And today, let us look at just one aspect of risk, which is to understand it. What is many a time we have these risk reduction programs without really understanding the full aspects of the risk. So, understanding risk is the first priority of action. I mean, we all know the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, and this is the first priority of action under Sendai framework. And we need to help decision makers fully understand it is not just whether a 6 magnitude earthquake or a 7 magnitude will happen, or what intensity of shaking will happen in my city, but the decision maker wants to know what will happen to my roads, what will happen to my power supply, what will happen to my schools, how will my hospitals fare, will they be able to function. So, I mean, all of those actually add to the risk of a place. We need to understand exactly what can happen in the next earthquake, since we are talking about earthquakes. And earthquake scenarios have been done across the country and in the region. Several earthquake scenarios have been done, which are really good tools to help. Sorry about that. Help decision makers, understand the risk and communicate it with to the communities that deserve to know more. So, how do we reduce the risk to the communities? What are the broad components of risk? And I would say the broad components of risk are hazard. One is a hazard, the earthquake hazard. My friend has just mentioned about the earthquake hazard in India, and but what really matters, the earthquake hazard is high, but the earthquake hazard is high in Japan as well. The earthquake hazard is high in the US as well. But what makes our risk different, or our risk more, is the vulnerabilities of our built environment in several of our cities, and maybe not enough capacities to have prepared and to be able to respond well in the next earthquake event. So let us look at each of these. The hazard hazard profile of India has, I think we have all the hazards there are on the globe, and this is the seismic earthquake zoning map, and closely connected with it is the landslide zoning map of the country. And the seismic zoning map, I mean, why do we have these earthquakes in India? Why is India so prone to earthquakes? Because of tectonics. Our is actually made up of several plates, and Indian plate is one small plate. Here you can see here just adjoining below the Eurasian, south of the Eurasian plate, the large Eurasian plate. Was the Indian plate always here? No. The Indian plate was close to the South Pole, along with the African plate, or Australian plate, and all were together very close to the South Pole, which the large continent just split up, and India moved north, in the northeasterly direction, as is shown here. It moved in the northeasterly direction, hitting against the Eurasian plate in about 10 million years back. And this collision, the Indian plate, as you can see, is a very small plate, and when it hit against the Eurasian plate, it just could not push the Eurasian plate back, and it went down under the Eurasian plate in a process called subduction, which is shown here below. One plate going up under the other plate, and mountains, land started rising up on the other side, forming the Himalayas. Each mountain, each inch of the Himalayas have been formed by earthquakes, by tectonic activities. So, which is why the entire North India is prone to earthquakes. It is not just North India, as we will see later on. This plate boundary, this black line, is the boundary between the Indian plate and the Eurasian plate, and this is where the two plates are interacting. One plate is pushing against the other plate, and in the process, these get locked. And when the rocks cannot take the stress any longer, it breaks. That is what we feel as a big earthquake. And when a large earthquake happens, some of the energy is released, which is good. So when in a place like Delhi, where you have not had a major shake for a long, long time, is it good news or bad news? It's probably bad news, because then the energy is building up in the Himalayas. As you can see, it is in this plate boundary that a lot of earthquakes have happened. These stars represent earthquakes, and the first one is the Kashmir earthquake of 2005. 77,000 people died in Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Coming down in 1905, exactly 100 years before, we had the Kangra earthquake, which killed about 22,000 people. This is still the highest killer in Indian soil. Coming down the plate boundary, you can see the 2015 Nepal earthquake, 2015. Going further down, the Bihar-Nepal earthquake of 1934. There was the Sikkim earthquake here in between, but it's not marked here. But the Shillong earthquake is next, 1897. And we go along the plate boundary in Arunachal Pradesh, China border. There was a 8 plus magnitude earthquake on Independence Day 1950, which was also 8 plus magnitude earthquake, the largest earthquake in the Northeast for several years, the last largest earthquake. There are also, the plate boundary comes down, cuts through Myanmar and goes along the Andaman Nicobar Islands onto Indonesia. And again, we see that the tsunami generating earthquake is on this very plate boundary. So this is where a lot of tectonic action is taking place. And you see this distance between the Kangra earthquake and the Nepal earthquake. In this region, has not had a major earthquake for quite some time, and hence many of the scientists are looking at that space expectantly, because that is where there could be I'm saying could be a large earthquake. And if that happens, Western Nepal, Uttarakhand, much of North India will be affected. So they always say you're between two earthquakes in time. The further away you are from the last earthquake, the closer you are to the next one. So this portion, like I mentioned, is really primed for a major event. The seismic zoning map of India shows 4 zones. Actually, there is no zone 1, because zone 1 used to be no risk zone. There's no place in India which is at no risk. So we have a zoning map which is low risk, moderate risk, high risk, and maximum risk. Delhi is in seismic zone 4, high risk. And as just a matter of interest, Latur, you remember Latur earthquake in Maharashtra, which killed over 8,000 people in 1993, is in seismic zone 3. Delhi is in 4. Guwahati is in 5, Srinagar is in 5, Ludhiana is in 4. I mean, we have a lot of cities which are at higher risk than Latur, but Latur had 8,000 deaths in being in zone 3. So very, it's not that Delhi is a safe place because it's only in seismic zone 4 and not 5. We could be affected by severe earthquakes. This is from the BMTPC NDMA seismic zoning map. It's adapted from the IS 1893, and you can see Delhi is flanked by two faults. Yes, so it may have local earthquakes, but really the danger is from this line, these set of lines, the plate boundary in the Himalayas, which can be a large earthquake, which can affect. I mean, Delhi is what, 200, 300 kilometers away from the plate boundary. Is that too far away for an earthquake forces to act? No. Ahmedabad was about 250 kilometers away from the epicenter of the Bhuj earthquake, and you know what devastation was caused in Ahmedabad. So Delhi, Durast, no, Delhi is unfortunately not too far for earthquake damage. India's earthquake risk is also high in Arunachal, North Bihar, Bhuj, in Andaman Nicobar Islands, which are all in seismic zone 5. The zoning map is being revised, so watch this space. We'll have better understanding of the earthquake hazard. Now we're looking at vulnerability. Many of our buildings are not built earthquake resistant, and as you can see from this photograph from Bhuj earthquake, you see there are two buildings, and one which went through the same earthquake. One which is a government building, the CPWD building, which was not at all affected by the earthquake because it was built earthquake resistant. It followed the code. It was built earthquake resistant. Whereas the other one, a private flat, is flat on the ground. Only the lift well is working. So vulnerability is something we are adding in many parts of our country. We are building bad buildings by the day, and each day our vulnerability is increasing. That means our risk is also increasing. This is from Nepal. We have similar buildings everywhere across our hilly areas. And vulnerability is not just buildings, it is also roads, it is also power supply, it is all of built environment and all of critical infrastructure. You can see the dam, the Chungtang Dam in Sikkim, which was affected by the glough. You can see below it is the dam is there, full and looking nice. Now you see it, now you don't. On top, it's not there anymore. Vulnerability. And this is from Nepal. They say school area drives low, but there's no school left. Nepal was lucky that the earthquake was on a Saturday, a school holiday. Otherwise, each of these classrooms, thousands of classrooms were brought down, and each of them would have 50 children each. You can imagine what a magnitude of a tragedy that would have been. And then you come to some of our hill towns. We have hilly areas all across the Himalayas. This is one example. They have built on every inch of space they can. This is Aizawl in Mizoram. If it is not built, it is vertical, and you can see risk is very visible there. The vulnerability of the built environment, and none of these buildings are small, single story buildings. So these are a 7 8, you can count here, at least 8-story buildings packed together, living people living in such unimaginably risky surroundings. And this is not just Aizawl alone. I mean, Shimla is soon growing up to be an Aizawl. Gangtok is on its way. There are so many buildings, so many cities which are growing like this. And we talk about reducing earthquake risk. It's very, very important to look at our vulnerability component, and this is the way it is built in the hilly areas. This is somebody has excavated to construct his building here, and the foundation of the of the top house is lying on the ground here. You can see it's lying on the ground. And, and that is the way construction happens. The man whose house is above him has no problem because he himself has cut the foundation of the house above him. And this is generally will be all covered with band-aid like like fixes, and we won't know about it, but the earthquake will know about it. Earthquake will bring down these vulnerabilities, what we call comorbidities, are going to hurt us big time. And we talk about Japan and their buildings, and you can see one example here. This white building here, this has gone through a 9 plus magnitude earthquake. A tsunami has gone through it and just left a ship on top of it. And still, I think with a little bit of cleaning, one coat of whitewash, this building will be usable. That is engineering. That is the lack of vulnerability, which is here, and that is the difference actually. Then we come to that is we talked about hazard, we talked about vulnerability. The third component of risk is capacity. Capacity is how well prepared your community is. Do your communities have plans? Does your school have plans? Is your hospital equipped to deal with emergencies? All of that adds to the capacity of the community. And this sad example from Afghanistan, I was looking at it as a news item. 12 girls died. I thought the building had collapsed. But when I read more, it was the building was fine. But when the shaking happens, the girls started running because there was no disaster management plan. There was no drills. They started running. One of the girls fell down. There was what we call a stampede. And, stampede happens when there is no planning. If there is a plan and everybody follows the plan, you know, we most likely will not be losing lives in emergencies. And this is an example from Japan again, where a set of school children are evacuating away from the tsunami risk. It's a very interesting story because it is called the miracle of Kamaishi. It is called miracle of Kamaishi, where no school-going child in this town was hurt in the tsunami because they had a plan and they had practiced the plan. And even though the tsunami was much bigger than what they had anticipated, they actually, because of their practice and because of their planning, could save themselves. The children had evacuated to an old age home because what tsunami was expected was about a 5-meter tsunami. So the old age home was 9 meters, so they evacuated to the roof of the old age home. And then the next announcement from the tsunami warning came that the tsunami is going to be higher than 10 meters. So you have to go to the hills, go to areas higher. So the children come down from the old age home, take the old people along with them, and they all evacuate to the hills, and no school going child was lost. It's such a miracle. It is a miracle of preparedness. It's a miracle of capacity. So, capacity, then we come to the next part. Unfortunately, my slides are not moving. Just a second. Give me a second to come out of it, and just give me a second. Let me open PowerPoint again. Something happened. Please forgive me for that.
No problem, sir. Please.
Let me just reach that slide. I'm running against time, I know. Yes. And then we have this incident in Delhi where the building had only one staircase, and there was a fire and children had to evacuate like this. This is not the epitome of preparedness, I must say. So let us move on. So hazard, vulnerability, and capacity, according to the UN Living with Risk document, it says that hazard hazard into vulnerability divided by
Uh,
capacity is risk.
Sorry to
Here, we
interrupt.
hardly have any control over the hazard. We only have control. Sorry,
Sorry to interrupt, sir. Is your
we
presentation
only have
open by any
control over the
chance?
vulnerability and the capacity. Pardon?
Is your presentation running by any chance, sir? Because we are not able to see the presentation.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, no
Let me go
problem,
back
sir.
and I'm so sorry. I started talking without sharing. I think. Is
Yes,
it
we can see
visible?
it now.
Yes. I'm so
Could you
sorry.
please try
Uh,
changing the slides? I'll confirm.
yeah, yeah. It's moving.
We are on the commercial slide.
Yes, yes. And then we had this incident. This is what I was talking about in Delhi, where in a coaching center there was a fire and children had to come down on ropes. Uh, Not really showing preparedness. I don't want to uh, dwell too much on that, but really our preparedness really we need to raise our preparedness in almost all our institutions. We hardly have good examples of preparedness. So hazard, vulnerability, capacity, the components of risk, and how do they add up according to the UN living with risk document. Hazard into vulnerability divided by capacity is risk at a place, and because we don't have control over hazard, the only way we can reduce our risk is to bring down our vulnerabilities and increase our capacities. And what Sphere India is trying to do here is to improve our capacities. A little bit of knowledge, a little, triggering that spark of interest in earthquake risk mitigation through such events. So, for reducing the risk, what we have to do is to actually look at vulnerability reduction and capacity building. I'm having a problem again. I'm sorry. This, yeah, yeah, it is moving. So increasing capacity, we need to understand risk, learning from past events. Very important that we need to learn from past events. Many a time we don't, and we have to learn from others' experience of other states, other countries. Nepal was spared because it was a Saturday and the school children were not injured. But are we taking a lesson from that and improving our school safety? We must. And we need to look at long term risk reduction plans and decreasing vulnerability, all future buildings. If we saw the example in Gujarat where the building which followed the code was not affected, even if we from today we make sure all our future buildings are built as per the code, our vulnerability will not increase, our risk based on vulnerability will not increase. We already have such a large amount of unsafe infrastructure which we need to retrofit. We need to work on those. And we also need to look at the effect of falling hazards, things falling inside buildings during earthquakes. That's a whole different presentation. We can talk about that later. But understand what all can happen in an earthquake. This rock falls can be triggered during earthquakes. Taiwan earthquake of 2024, you can see how many landslides were triggered during the earthquake. This earthquake was very interesting because it triggered a lot of landslides, and there were many videos of that. The tsunami generating earthquake in 2011 triggered a lot of fires. You lose your power, that means you lose many hill towns, you lose electricity, you lose water supply as well, because water is pumped up. Shimla, 85% of the water supply of Shimla is pumped up. Aizawl, nearly 90% is pumped up. So if you lose electricity, you lose water as well. You lose electricity, you lose hospitals as well. So we need to understand risk in that aspect. I mean, not just how big the earthquake is, but what are the effects on the community and how is it going to affect our communities? This is a rockfall video. I don't think I have the time to show. This is very much available on the internet. Rockfall video during the Taiwan earthquake. It's pretty shocking to see, but it is already playing. They had the warning, and the car is reversing. It was going up the hill. They could see dust on the other side. The rocks have started falling, and you see what is happening. This rockfall hazard is going to affect our hill towns, the connectivity to our hill towns, and very, very important to consider the effects of earthquakes. This is on the Dimapur Kohima highway, not due to an earthquake, but a rockfall hazard all the way. Rockfall affecting critical pipelines. Rockfall affecting a PHC, Chungtang PHC was knocked out by a rock which was triggered by the Sikkim earthquake. But for me, the most important rock here is not the one which hit the PHC. You see the rock here? This rock has been there for ages, probably there before the PHC was done. So, did the engineer think, this rock, where did it come from? It must have come from up there. And in the next monsoon or in the next earthquake, will the brothers and sister rocks of this will come down and hit my PHC? We need to think. We don't understand our risk. We don't consider our risk fully. So, our connectivity roads, Gangtok is connected to India by one road, one highway, prone to landslides. Earthquakes, if triggers landslides, your connectivity, you will find it difficult to start rescue operations and to help Sikkim do save lives there. Their hospitals save lives there. Very important transportation infrastructure, lifelines, buildings knocked out by earthquakes and tsunamis. This is from the Taiwan earthquake recently. So before initiating risk reduction measures, we need to understand the effects of future hazards on our community, on the critical infrastructure which help our community. We need to introduce programs while understanding the context, while understanding the community, understand what increases risk in these communities, and understanding what can be done to reduce overall risk at a place. And for a safe city, many things have to come together for a city to remain safe and functional. The community have to be safe and prepared. That's a huge task in itself. Health facilities have to remain functional, not safe. So that means a hospital should have water supply, electricity, it should have staff prepared, it should have communications, then only the hospital can take care of patients coming after the earthquake. Lifeline, electricity, water supply systems which will support the health systems. Roads have to be functional, communications have to be functional. There should be enough supplies available. Many things together to consider, many aspects where the risk has to be reduced, when we are looking at earthquake risk. So what can you do? Understand your risk. That is your first aspect. Really understand your risk, not just, I'm in seismic zone 4. No. Understand what all can happen. I'm in Delhi. I'm living on a third story apartment. There's one staircase. What can happen? I have a person who needs a wheelchair and there is no lift in my apartment. Understand your risk. Understand your role in reducing it and understand how you can reduce it. Think about it. Build your capacities on disaster management, especially on preparedness, design, earthquake resistant design, construction, and spread the knowledge. Get more people interested. It's a race between the risk reduction efforts that we are doing right now and the next big earthquake. And more often than not, we are losing it. So we need more and more people to join in and work towards a disaster resistant, resilient India. So please join in. Orissa has done it. Orissa, 99, there was this huge cyclone. They lost 10,000 plus people. But in 2013, when the cyclone repeated, they had 22 deaths, 23 deaths. They have been working, and every state has working and continue working. Working on cyclones is one thing, like working on earthquakes is a totally different ball game, and more sustained efforts are required. And people cannot be saying like this person whose job was it the line on the side of the road. There was a branch on the way. Moving that is not my job. And many people I've talked to, school administrators, talked to hospital administrators, talked to government officials who believe disaster management is not their job. Disaster management is the SDMA's job, it's the DDMA's job. Disaster management is everybody's job. Everybody has a role to play in disaster management, and all need to come together. It cannot be, it affects different communities different. A prepared community, it will not affect much. So let us prepare and prevent, than repair and repent. I'll end here. I'm sorry, I must have taken some time more than I was allocated. Sorry to the organizers and the people who are going to present ahead of me. Thank you so much. Take it away from me.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you for breaking down disaster risk reduction and saying how important increasing capacity and the very critical importance of engineering measures. And the inspiring takeaway from your presentation for me was the miracle of Kamashi and the ship on top of the building thing. And I understood how critically important engineering measures are. Thank you so much for that, sir. Let's move on to the next speaker. And I would like to invite Dr. Sudhindra Kumar to present on inclusive earthquake risk reduction, protecting vulnerable communities. It spears, it spears overarching principle of
Yeah, thank you.
inclusive inclusion. Sir, Dr. Sudhindra Singh, I would like to, sorry, Dr. Sudhindra sir, I would like to have the honor of introducing you. Give me a minute for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Uh,
Thank you.
Mr. Sudhindra is a committed social activist and disability rights advocate with over 25 years of experience in community-based rehabilitation and the empowerment of persons with disabilities. Despite being visually impaired since birth, Sir has emerged as a leader in disability inclusion, advocacy, and social development. Has currently serves as the project director at Narendra Foundation and the joint director of DNA Network in Karnataka. Over the years, Sir has played key roles in facilitating self-help groups, training PWD leaders, and ensuring access to government schemes and entitlements. He has also worked with the Caritas India CPR Forum, training disability groups across 18 states and 1 union territory. Sir has successfully mobilized resources, advocated for budget allocations for PWDs, and led mass movements for disability rights. His activism includes organizing state and district level dharnas, ensuring the utilization of 3 to 5% panchayat funds for the PWDs, and promoting entrepreneurship for disabled individuals. A widely recognized leader, his work has been featured in leading Kannada newspapers, highlighting him as a role model for disability rights and social empowerment. It is very inspiring to read through your bio, sir. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. I would like to welcome everyone and good afternoon to everyone. Uh, the previous session we have gone through lots of things and uh, mostly about risk and how we prepare uh, for the risk reduction. So let us little bit talk about inclusive risk reduction or inclusive rehabilitation when earthquakes or any disasters happen. Fine, I'm audible.
Yes, sir. You are audible. It's loud and clear.
Yeah, yeah. So disability Now, as per Rights of Person with Disabilities Act 2016, we have 21 types of disabilities. Let us try to understand something about disability and the way people are uh, globe thinks about disability. But so after that, we can come to the inclusive risk reduction or inclusive rehabilitation. As I said, there are 21 types of disabilities. More than 1.6 crore person with disabilities in India, as per census 2011. So when this data was captured, there was only seven disabilities plus to nine disabilities was covered through uh, Disability Act 1995. So, which means now it is 21 types of disabilities, and it will definitely cross 3 crores of person with disabilities in India. This is one statistics. NSSO says 5 to 6% of the population living with disabilities, and WHO, World Health Organization, which is a guiding organization for disability and development, it says 10% of the world population dealing with disability. So whatever the percentage, but you see locomotor disability and visual impairment, again low vision, again speech and hearing, hard of hearing, speech and language disabilities. When it comes to intellectual disability, learning disability, and then mental retardation, now it is called intellectual disability ID, and there are blood related uh, hemophilia, thalassemia, and there are multiple disability also, cerebral palsy and deaf blindness. 21 types of disabilities, a huge list of disabilities, and in which again priority is like always people says all the person with disabilities are priority and we have to treat them like differently. They are differently able. They are special people. All those things. But when needs who any person who is in need of eye support, maybe day-to-day life, day-to-day activities, the life who needs the support of the carer. So that's one part. Secondly, when it comes to children with disability, more vulnerable, and third, women with the severe disabilities means I support need the more and more vulnerable. So we have to understand like disability is a cross-cutting issue because it's everywhere. So there are men, there are women, there are children, there are adults, there are senior citizens, and there are disabled people in tribals, in Dalits, in uh, everywhere. So intersectional connectivity should be there, but which is right now, which is seen very less percentage of that kind of attention to the uh, intersectional needs. So as I said, there are vulnerable groups in the community. In the earlier presentation, also um, mentioning that many communities from the poor background and from more vulnerable places, vulnerable geographical places. So, if you consider India as a like on this one, in there are poor people, people living in the slums, people living in the hilly areas, people living in the uh, forests, like uh, tribes especially. Everywhere there is a disability, but they are all more vulnerable. Again, within those communities, there are person with disabilities. Again, multiplying the vulnerability. This is one part. Second part, the preparedness for any disaster is always a challenge, and priorities are different for any government or any uh, teams that are working for risk reduction and rehabilitation. So we had, I was in Caritas India CBR firm, we were trying to prepare a manual which is called DIDRR, Disability Inclusive Risk Reduction and Rehabilitation. Disability Inclusive Disaster Risk Reduction and Rehabilitation Manual. So it was in the draft stage. So there was a disaster management team. They were looking at that and they were trying to add a value to it. But we have, from our unit, we have given the recommendations to include the disability component and what are the things or what are the preparedness, so, and type of capacity building that has to be done for person with disabilities, for all types of person with disabilities, keeping in mind that person with eye support needs. And that's one thing. And when it comes to preparedness, very very important when looking at the disability component. For example, if there is a uh, alarm systems that has to be made inclusive, there are some bells, or there are some sirens people might have planned and installed, but the same siren will not help the person with speech and hearing because he or she cannot hear, so they will be under big risk. So what can be done? That I'll come to that part later. And there are person with intellectual disability, there will be person with mental illness, there will be person with total blindness. So they may not be in a position to understand what the alarm system, because they are not capacitated by the system or by the community groups or community prepared groups, whatever. This is one big challenge we see in the preparedness. When we form people form community groups as part of preparedness, usually person with disabilities are excluded because they say, okay, no problem, we are there, we will care for you. Why you have to be member in the group? Why you have to come for the meeting? Why you have to face difficulties? See, that type of sympathy they will show, but when it comes to the participation and when it comes to the preparedness, they will lose the uh, objective of it. So that's second part. So this is the one challenge, big challenge in the disaster uh, management or disaster risk reduction. So during earthquakes or during any disaster, people say we have to give priority. Article 11 of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities also says person with disabilities has to be given priority. So we have to see, as a human being, every life is important at that point. It's not that disabled person, it's a girl, it's a woman, it's a, we don't know. So who is where when earthquake happened? We don't know. You can't go on searching only for disabled people or only for women or only for old age people. It's sometimes looks funny, but there should be some priority, keeping extra manpower or keeping extra technology used for this purpose, because they are more vulnerable. They can't run away, they can't see, they can't walk alone, so they are little dependent at that time of any disaster. especially earthquakes. And the rehabilitation part, right? We have government has prepared with temporary shelters. Made, schools have been made as a temporary shelters or any shelters, any kind of places as per the instructions. They will have some kind of a relief camps or something like that. But one big issue is accessibility. So we have seen many people not able to use the toilet. Mostly they will have Indian toilets, and the person with locomotor not able to use, wheelchair user not able to use the camps because they don't have any accessible uh, adaptations. And many people can't enter into the shelter itself, the temporary camps itself, because there are many steps, or in the hilly areas there are big rocks and all. Then they will not be able to enter with the wheelchair. So more than that, people will lose their all appliances, whatever they have, any tricycle, wheelchair, hearing aid, and their spectacles or white cane, whatever the appliances they use for their daily mobility, they will be lost in the earthquake or any these things. So these are the challenges we see. So for that, so let me throw some light on preparedness. So there is a technology now where there is an alarm system. Can people include vibration wherever there is a sound? Can people include vibrations so that person with speech learning also get vibration and understand something is going to happen? I have to be alert. Can there will be video audio displays both, so people can see and also hear? Can person with disabilities included in the uh, community groups and involve them in the discussions, share the responsibilities with them, s- take their like needs and these things. So what are the needs they might require during this type of disasters? Oh, that's one level beginning before like anything happens, and see their appliances safeguarded along with them, because immediately you cannot bring in any appliances and provide them, because for example, one person with artificial limb, if he or she lost the artificial limb in the thing, or left there when rescuing, so it will take some 2 to 3 months to get them back from a new artificial limb. Instead of that, if disaster management teams alert and they're aware of this type of needs, they can uh, rescue their appliances along with them, so it will help them immediately. This is one thing. And IEC materials, preparedness part, IEC materials has to be made accessible in all formats: audio, video, braille, signs, sign language interpretation. All these will help person with disabilities and their carers to save their life. And most importantly, when it comes to intellectual disability and mental illness, the carers play a vital role, because they can't understand because of their intellectual disability. So carers have to save them. There is a more attention is required. You have to save two lives there. One is the person, and another one is carer. In case of person with eye support need, also same. There are two lives, three lives, sometime three people. a person who is on the bed, not able to sit, not able to move, so will be cared by a mother or a sister or any sibling. It's always two people sometime as they grow. So these type of challenges and this type of preparedness both simultaneously required. And when it comes to um, rehabilitation part, priority is very very important. So family, they will be already, we don't know who is there and who is gone, and these people are required more attention and more extra care um, as a human being to survive within the community again and build their life, rebuild their life. So if there are lots of opportunities, like they can have one small shop and where they can earn something for their bread and butter. They can go for any livestock rearing, or they can go for any small businesses within the community. So whatever they can, and along with these type of livelihood options for rehabilitation, they should also keep in mind that their appliances have been replaced or repaired or provided with a new one. So that will help them in mobility, and they can lead independent life uh, again, and they can also support others in the community in whatever way they can. So these are the things. If you if we all can take care during, before any earthquake or any disaster, and during the disasters and after the disasters. So a person with disabilities can be included very well, and that can be called as a inclusive community or inclusive disaster risk reduction and rehabilitation uh, process. So it's a process. It's not like one today it's happened and over, and tomorrow there may be new kind of a need which may arrive. So in other part, because geographically and person to person and disability is different needs, so they have to care for it, and they have to support and take them along with the communities and build their capacity to uh, resist any kind of a disasters. So this is about inclusion of person with disabilities and how we have to look at it, because disability is not a charity now, it's a rights based approach the world is looking at now. After the UNCRPD, United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, is rectified and signed by more than 208 countries. So it's a disability is a human rights issue, and disability is a developmental issue now, and it's intersectional and interconnected with all type of communities and all type of geographical areas. So with that angle, so disability inclusion is very very crucial and very very important, and it's a mandatory as per the guidelines of National Disaster Management and Risk Reduction now. So you can Google it. You'll get a separate page of guidelines to include person with disabilities in the risk reduction and rehabilitation. So that's it from my side, and thanks for the opportunity. Hope you have got the um, cream of it. So later we can discuss if required. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for once again reminding us that in- disabled people inclusion is a right and it's mandatory according to the government itself. And thank you for also walking us through the different types of disabilities and how vibrations can be added and audiovisual aids can be added and even braille systems to be added in IEC materials and how livelihood of these
Yeah,
PWDs are also very important. Thank you so much for walking us through it. So I would like to move on to,
yeah. Thank you. Hope I have done justice for my role.
yes, sir, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next speaker of today, Dr. Sareer Ahmed. So we'll be talking about seismic gaps and earthquake hazard assessment. Dr. Sareer Ahmed Mir is a dedicated researcher and lecturer specializing in GPS geology, geodesy, seismology, and seismotectonics. With over 5 years of research experience, Sir has contributed significantly to the understanding of crustal deformation, seismic hazard assessment, and geospatial analysis. Dr. Mir holds a PhD in applied geology from the University of Kashmir, where he works now. His research was focused on the seismic hazard potential in Kashmir using GPS measurements. Sir has provided valuable insights into tectonic movements and earthquake risk in the Northwest Himalayas. Sir has published extensively in peer-reviewed journals covering topics such as crustal strain estimation, seismogenesis, and geomorphology. His research has also explored the impact of mining-induced subsidence and fault system dynamics in seismic-prone regions. Dr. Mir has taught as an assistant professor at the University of Kashmir and has presented his findings at national and international conferences. Sir has skilled in GIS, remote sensing, instrumentation, and geological modeling. As an active member of Scientific Association, Sir has remained
Ma'am, I think
committed.
this is enough. Let
Okay.
us let us start our discussion.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Over to you.
Is my screen visible to everyone?
Not yet, sir. It's visible now. Could you
Is
please
it
turn to
visible now?
presentation mode?
Hi everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Dr. Sarir Ahmad. I am an assistant professor on contractual basis at the University of Kashmir. I have recently completed my PhD from the same department, and I have also worked in the National Geophysical Research Institute, Telangana, Hyderabad, where my primary focus was on the seismic hazard assessment of the northwestern Himalayas. Today, I will talk about the earthquakes, what are seismic gaps, and how we can assess the earthquake hazard of any region. If we look at our country, India, we have about 65% of our land which is vulnerable to the earthquakes, especially the areas towards the Himalayan range, that is the entire Himalayan arc, the western portion of the India, like the Gujarat, and also the Andaman Sea, the Andaman and the Nicobar Islands. These areas are highly vulnerable to the seismic hazard, or we can say the earthquake hazard. 70% of our land is land under cultivation is prone to drought due to various reasons like the variations in the monsoon, variations in the precipitation events, and so on. 5% of our land, that is about the 40 million hectares, are vulnerable to floods because of the there are several factors responsible for the flooding in the Indian subcontinent. 88% of the land is vulnerable to the cyclones. This especially includes the area lying along the coastal track of the entire Himalaya. A major disaster occurs every 2 to 3 years, and in each disaster, 50 million people get affected, and 1 million homes get damaged annually with the loss of humans, social, and other property losses. If we look at the earthquakes are nothing, these are just the movements. Or we can say this earthquake is the ground movement due to the sudden release of energy within the crust of the earth. Or in simple words, we can say earthquake is a heart attack of the earth. If we compare a human body with the earthquake, the human body has its precursors and the earth has its precursors. If we take a heart patient, it has some precursors which finally give a signal that this patient is going to rupture in the future. Same is happening with the earth. Earth has its precursors which tell us that in future this portion of the Earth is going to rupture. If we look at the long term precursor, a person having heart disease is going to have heart attack in the future. Same is with the seismically active region. If an area is seismically active, it will rupture in the future. If we look at the medium term precursors, the heart patient has always high blood pressure. And if we look at the earthquake, medium precursor of the earthquake, the area which is seismically active, it has continuous accumulation of the energy, which energy is released in the form of major or minor earthquake shocks. And if we look at the short term precursor, or we can say just before the event, a patient with the heart disease has severe chest pain before the heart attack. And if we look at the earthquake, at the earth, before the major seismic event, a small foreshocks happen before that. These are some of the precursors, or we can say comparison between the human body and the earth. What are the causes? Now, what are the causes of the earthquake? Actually, there is only one major cause, that is the accumulation of energy within the crust. This energy gets started accumulating when the movement of the plates takes place, and it gets stored in the rocks as long as the rock has the capacity. Once the capacity of the rock exceeds, this stored energy gets released in the form of elastic waves, which we call them as seismic waves. Now, what are the causes? Fault movement releases energy. As the fault ruptures, the energy releases from the focus, or we can say the point of the origin of earthquake, in all the directions. During the earthquake, two types of seismic waves, or we can say elastic waves, are generated, known as the body waves and the surface waves. The body waves are further of two types, primary waves and the secondary waves, but these are not so harmful to the building or the infrastructure. But the two types of the surface waves, lava waves and the Rayleigh waves, these are the most dangerous, or we can say most destructive waves that are generated during the earthquake. And most of the damage happening throughout the world due to earthquakes is because of these surface waves. Now, if we look at the seismic gap, what is seismic gap? A seismic gap is actually a region where there are infrequent earthquakes, or we can say the region that has not experienced a great earthquake since a long time. If we look at the entire Himalayan range, the entire Himalayan range has a length of approximately 2,500 kilometers from Hazara syntaxes in the Pakistan side and Namchi Barwa syntaxes on the northeastern side of our country. This entire Himalayan arc has been divided into three parts, known as the Eastern Seismic Gap, Western Seismic Gap, and the Central Seismic Gap. Some researchers have already carried out work on the seismic gaps, like the one is the Roger Wilhelm from the Colorado University, USA. He has started this work in the Indian subcontinent. Then this work was followed by the 4PI, National Geophysical Research Institute, various IITs of our country, and they have estimated that there are different segments in the entire Himalayan arc that are vulnerable to very high magnitude earthquakes. They have mentioned that the northeastern region will experience an earthquake with a magnitude greater than 8.2. Same with the case in the central Himalayas, there would be some earthquakes greater than 8 magnitude, and also for the northwestern part of Himalayas where I am living presently, they have estimated that an earthquake of more than 7.6 magnitude will hit the Kashmir region. Now, what is the main reason why earthquakes are mostly occurring on this part of our country? Why not on the southern side of the country? Why not on the Indo-Ganges Plains? Why only on this side? There is one major fault known as the main Himalayan thrust that is lying beneath the entire Himalayan arc from the eastern end to the western end. And this fault system, and and on this fault system, the Indian plate, or we can say the Indian subcontinent, is under thrusting beneath the Eurasian plate, and this under thrusting is responsible for the generation of enormous amount of friction. The friction does not allow the plate to simply subduct beneath the Eurasia, so a huge amount of energy gets accumulated on the interface between the Eurasian plate and the Indian plate. When enormous amount of energy gets stored and the rocks are not capable of absorbing further energy, the stored energy gets released in the form of seismic events. I have shown it in the map. There are various fault systems throughout the entire Himalayan arc, but the major fault which is responsible for the earthquake activity in the Himalayan region is the main Himalayan thrust. Now, what is the technique, and now what are the techniques how we can assess whether this region is seismically active, whether this region is going to experience a seismic event in the future or not? There are mainly two types of techniques. One is the probabilistic seismic hazard, and another is the deterministic. In the first technique, probabilistic technique, we are using different we can say we are using different types of data sets, and finally we provide, or we can say we generate a map where we give the probability. For example, in our Kashmir region, I have published a paper where I have given a probability of 50%. For example, Kashmir Valley has the chance of 15%, 50% chances of the earthquake with a magnitude of 7.6. That means it may happen or not may happen. It is a probability, not a fixed time. Another is the deterministic, in which we actually estimate the actual amount of the energy which is accumulating within the crust of the earth, and on the basis of few scaling relationships, mathematical calculations, we finally determine how much amount of energy is going to release in the future event. For this earthquake assessment, we have to locate, or we have to acquire certain data sets. For example, we have to locate, first of all we have to locate the faults. Faults are nothing, these are just the cracks on the crust of the earth, where the movement, where the relative movement between the two blocks takes place. How can we locate the faults? There are different geophysical instruments by which we are able to locate the faults. One is the GPS, global positioning system, which operates at a sub-mm level accuracy scale, that actually gives us the latitude, longitude, and altitude. We finally convert this latitude, longitude using different mathematical calculations into velocity vectors, and and that velocity vectors finally give us the differential velocity if a fault is present somewhere on the crust of the earth. Then we are in need of the geology of the area. The geology of the area has already, for the entire Himalayan, or the geology of the area has already been carried by the DN Wadia, from the Wadia Institute of the Himalayan Geology, by VC Thakkar, and some eminent geoscientists from the India. They have already carried out the geological mapping of the entire Himalayan range. We have also to estimate the historical. We have to also know about the historical events, when event has taken place, what was its magnitude, so that we can estimate the recurrence interval between the two major earthquake events. We have also to measure the relative motion and the crustal deformation. For the GPS and also the synthetic aperture radar, is the best available tool, which gives us the actual movement of the crust taking place. This is my work that has been published in the Geological Journal in 2023. It's a part of my PhD work.
Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Ahmed.
Ji.
We are not able to see your slides more. It's stuck in slide 8.
Are they now visible?
Yes, we are on slide 11 now.
Are the slides now visible?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. This is a part of my PhD work. I have carried my work on the Kashmir region of the northwestern Himalayas, where I have estimated the recurrence interval of the earthquake, where I have evaluated which type of faulting is taking place in the Kashmir and also the surrounding regions. which I have already published, and I have also demarcated certain faults which you can see from the slide, like the CSF Central Kashmir fault. Some faults which I have already, which are visible in the map. Yeah, these are some of the prerequisites for the seismic hazard estimate of any region. This is the earthquake hazard map of the entire India. If we look at the northern side of our country, the northern side of our country falls in seismic zone 5 and seismic zone 4, which means that this area has the maximum chances of future seismic events. We have recently seen 2015 Gorkha earthquake and 2005 Kashmir Valley earthquake, because this region, the Himalayan region, actually lies at the boundary between the Eurasian plate and the Indian plate. Rest of the India is, we can say, North Sea, but it has the lesser chances as compared to the Himalayan range. This is the seismicity of our country from the last 40 years. You can see how much earthquakes have occurred in the Himalayan side as compared to the southern side of our country. Now, what are the effects of earthquakes? An earthquake cannot kill a person directly, but it has the secondary effect that depends upon our infrastructure. For example, if we are living in a building that is not earthquake resistant, during an earthquake of magnitude 6, it will fall down. These are some of the pictures from 2005 earthquake from Pakistan side.
Dr.
Pakistan.
Ahmed, we are not able to see the slides that you're talking about. It's stuck again.
Is it now visible?
Yes.
Okay. These are some of the field photographs from Pakistan occupied Kashmir and from the Bhuj earthquake of the Indian side, where the infrastructure has completely collapsed during an earthquake. These are some also some of the field evidences from the 2005 Pakistan earthquake, where almost 80,000 people lost their life because of the improper, or we can say unengineered construction. This is my recent field visit to the Kashtawar region of the Jammu side, where I have where I have worked for few days as a seismic expert, where I found that although no huge event has occurred from last 50, we can say last 50 60 years, but the small magnitude events are occurring daily, because of there is a huge construction of the dams in that region, which is inducing the seismicity. Not only the earthquakes, there are also sudden disasters that are associated with the earthquakes. For example, if an earthquake occurs in the hilly regions, the material will roll down and it will result in the landslides. It would result in the blockage of the water channels. This is the field photograph from the Japan, where the construction is in such a way that if the if the ground beneath a building liquefies, or we can say collapses, the entire building falls without breaking. You can see that in the center a building has just fall down, but it has not broken into pieces, as compared to the buildings on the Pakistan side and the Indian side. Besides the landslides, floods, and the dam failure is also associated. If a great magnitude earthquake more than 6 occurs, it will result in the failure of the dam also. If we compare the energy of the earthquake, if we compare the energy released during an earthquake with the other materials, for example, a 2 magnitude earthquake will produce as energy as 250 kg of explosive. For example, one atomic bomb needs 64 kg of explosive dynamite, and for the 2 kg earthquake, 250 kg, we can say 10 power 8 joules of energy are released during it, but these are dispersed throughout the crust, so we are not able or we can say we are not able to see that huge amount of energy is releasing during the earthquake. This is the probability of future earthquakes of the Himalayan region, which work has been carried out by the Bilham 2019. He says that the entire Himalayan arc, except the regions which are marked by green color, these regions are going to experience huge magnitude earthquakes. For example, he said that the eastern Bhutan and the Arunachal Pradesh is going to experience an earthquake of magnitude 8.7. The central seismic gap, that is the our central Himalayas, like the Uttarakhand, Garhwal Himalayas, this is going to experience an earthquake of magnitude 8.5 to 8.7. He has also warned our region, that is the northwestern part of our. He said that the Kashmir is going to experience an earthquake of 7.8 to 8.2. But as my point of view, I have some objections to his research which I have published already, because the crust is not homogeneous, it is not an ideal condition, the crust is heterogeneous. That experiment which we are carried out in the Kashmir would not be same for the northeastern side of our country. So I don't believe that this will happen in future. Now we know that we are living in a country where there are different types of disasters are happening, but we can't leave our country where we go. That means we have to live with disasters. That means we have to prepare
But I
ourselves.
think, sorry, we are running out of time. Could you please make it short?
Okay, thank you. That is enough. That means this part has already been presented by
Yes,
Professor
yes,
Hari.
yes, yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed. Thank you for your presentation. Let's move on to the next speaker, Dr. Yogendra Singh. I'll give a short introduction of Dr. Singh. Sir is a professor at the Department of Earthquake Engineering, IIT Roorkee, specializing in seismic vulnerability assessment, earthquake resistant design, and structural reforming. Sir has a PhD from IIT Delhi and has advanced performance-based seismic design and risk evaluation of buildings and bridges. Sir has served in national committees of NDMA expert group and the BIS working group of seismic code design, and so has researched in seismic hazard assessment in the Himalayas, structural resilience in hill regions, and soil structure interaction. Sir has bagged awards of IIT at Outstanding Teacher Award and Dr. Chalkrishna Prize, and has contributed immensely to research and policy. We welcome you, sir. Apologies for the very short time that is left
Yeah.
for you.
Okay. Thank you,
Over to you,
Lakshmi
sir.
ji.
Thank
So,
you.
how much time I have? About 15 minutes?
Yes, sir. We can accommodate
Okay.
15 minutes. Yes.
I will share my screen. And I guess my presentation is visible.
Yes,
Is
sir.
it visible? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you and good afternoon to all who have joined. So, you have listened to the previous speakers, and finally, we have to come to this conclusion that earthquake is a natural phenomena which we cannot stop, and even we cannot predict it. So we do not have any other option except designing our structures to withstand earthquakes. So if you look at record of a typical earthquake, it is something like this, and it is very peculiar in the sense that uh, these are the records of an earthquake are very different than any other load. If we compare it with the other types of forces which are acting on our structures, buildings, like the dead load, live load, wind load, so even it is different than that because it is changing its direction very rapidly. So it changes its direction in a fraction of second, and we take advantage of that in designing our structure. So actually, earthquake causes a very high force on our structures, And as a result, those structures which have been standing for 50 or even 100 years under other types of forces, those collapse during earthquake. And it may not be feasible to design, or economical at least, if it is technically feasible. Economically, it may not be viable to design the structures for that level of earthquake force. So what we do, we design our structures for a lower level of earthquake. So it has been pointed out during the past, the previous presentations, that the damage has been mostly due to non-engineered construction. But when we are even having uh, designed, engineered construction, even then the damage may occur, because we are designing our structures to get damaged. If I want to design my structures not to get damaged, I have to put more material, and that is going to be costly. So conventionally, whatever structures we have been designing so far, those structures will undergo damage, even if those have been designed as per codes. So one of the questions which we have to answer is that which earthquake I have to design my structure for. So Professor Mir presented a method, rather two methods he talked about, of seismic hazard assessment, deterministic and probabilistic, that can provide us some idea about the earthquake which I am expecting at the site where I'm going to design my structure. And these records which we get from the earthquake, these are unique for each earthquake. So these are like signatures of an earthquake, and whatever we will get in future will be different. So what we do, we represent these earthquake records in terms of response spectrum. So what is a response spectrum? You can think it like this, that there is a series of simple structures. These simple structures we call single degree freedom systems, which consist of only one column and a mass here. And all these simple structures are subjected to identical ground motion. The same ground motion is applied. Now, what is observed, that under the same ground motion, the response of these single degree freedom systems are different. That depends upon the period of vibration of these single degree freedom systems. And if I take peak of each of these single degree freedom system response and plot it with respect to the period, the frequency at which the period is inverse of the frequency at which the structure is vibrating. So if I plot it with respect to the frequency or period, I will get a plot. That plot we call response spectrum. And in case of engineering design, we are using this response spectrum for design. And the shape of this response spectrum is important to us. So here you see the typical shape of the response spectrum, which is given in the codes. And you can see that initially it has some value corresponding to 0, which is close to the peak ground acceleration. So whatever record of acceleration we have made for an earthquake, we take peak of that. So that will be close to this value. And then as the period of the structure increases, this increases, the response reaches the peak, and then the response decreases in proportion to 1 upon t. So where t is the period of the structure, so as the period is increasing, the response is reducing. And as a result, the short structures, short and stiff structures, those are subjected to high acceleration. And force is mass into acceleration. Earthquake actually is causing inertia force, and inertia force is nothing but mass into acceleration. So acceleration is giving us the force acting on per unit mass. So we can see if the structure is flexible, the period is longer, then the force acting per unit mass will reduce significantly. So by some means, if I can enhance, if I can increase the period of vibration of the structure, the force on that structure can be reduced. And we will make use of this in some of the techniques. Now, conventionally, when we are designing our structures, we are designing those to get damaged. In other words, we are designing our structures to go into inelastic range. What is this inelastic range? That initially, if I go on increasing the force on my structure, the load displacement behavior will be linear. Then it becomes non-linear. And if I unload from here, it will not follow back the same path which it has followed during loading. It will follow this path during loading. And if the load is reversible like earthquake, it will have a cyclic behavior and it will complete a hysteretic cycle like this. So in this hysteretic cycle, the structure is dissipating energy, and that energy dissipated per cycle is equal to the area of this hysteretic loop. So larger is the size of this hysteretic loop, more energy the structure is dissipating. And we estimate this energy dissipation capacity of the structure. If that capacity is higher than the amount of energy being imparted to the structure will be able to survive that. Otherwise, it is going to collapse. So we do take into account this energy dissipation capacity of the structure during earthquake. And in our current design philosophy, what we do, first we estimate the demand on the structure. So demand on the structure is given by this blue color curve. This is nothing but the response spectrum. As I explained, it first increases, then it becomes constant, and then it decreases proportional to 1 upon T. So this we get from deterministic or probabilistic seismic hazard assessment. So this is realistic estimate of the response spectrum I am expecting at my site. And then this I will reduce by a reduction factor R, which we call response reduction factor R. And this response reduction factor R is representing the energy dissipation capacity of the structure. So depending on the hysteretic behavior, the size of the hysteretic loop, which the structure can form, we can estimate the amount of energy dissipation capacity, and we reduce the applied force by a factor, and then we design it for that. So we have to keep in mind that in case of earthquake, we are designing our structures for forces lower than what are expected to act on the structure. And what will be the outcome? The outcome will be that the structure which we are designing will undergo damage during earthquake. So whatever structures, whether engineered or non-engineered, we are constructing, those are designed to get damaged during earthquake. And that has been observed during past earthquakes. So for example, this Horizon Apartments, one of the well-designed buildings in Kathmandu, but during this 2015 earthquake, it was damaged. You can see that the damage is mostly in those components which are not designed for earthquake. For example, these partitions, these are not designed for earthquake. And all the RCC members are almost intact. There is negligible damage to the concrete elements. Most of the damage was to those non-structural components. So from the point of view of design philosophy, this building has performed the way it was designed for. But if you look from the owner's point of view, this building has suffered damage, and the repair will require about 80% of the original cost, because all the services, these partitions are to be done again, all the services are to be done again. And nowadays in buildings, the cost of services is much more, and actual structural cost is not that high. So this philosophy, which we have been following traditionally, in which we design our structures to get damaged, but we do not allow those to collapse. So we design our structures in such a way that even under a severe earthquake like the one which happened in Nepal, the Gurkha earthquake of 2015, so even under such an earthquake, it should not collapse. So this structure has shown that it has not collapsed. That way, it has passed the test of earthquake. But the economic loss is high. People had put their lifetime savings in purchasing apartments here, and now 80% of that is required again to repair it. So that is quite significant. So this design philosophy is definitely not acceptable from the current point of view. And imagine of a hospital. If a hospital that is damaged to this an extent that services are not there, the partitions, the walls have collapsed, then that hospital will not be usable. It will not be available after the earthquake when it is needed. So for our modern structures, what we want to construct in future, this type of design philosophy is not acceptable, and we go for a more advanced design philosophy, what we call performance-based design. So in case of performance-based design, we are designing the structures for a targeted performance. So we decide what we want from our structure after an earthquake. If given a choice, perhaps everybody will like that nothing should happen to the structure after earthquake. The structure should be functional as if it was before earthquake, but that will require higher cost. So we have to make a compromise between the cost and the expected performance, and we have to decide a performance level. And that performance level is in terms of the expected damage during earthquake. So we can decide that we want our structure to remain operational after an earthquake. For example, if I'm designing a hospital building, the objective will be that the building should be available or should be fully operational after the earthquake. If we are designing a common residential building, then perhaps we will compromise with life safety, that there should not be any threat to the life. Financial losses, perhaps we can bear, but we cannot bear a loss of a family member. So perhaps that will be the targeted performance. So we can design for any of these targeted performance using this methodology, which is still not adopted by our code, but some other codes of the world, they have already adopted this. Then in case of buildings like hospitals where we don't want damage, we need more advanced construction techniques. And one such construction technique which we use is called base isolation. So in base isolation, we are putting the building over these bearings. We call these base isolators or isolation bearings. These are flexible elements. And as a result, when the ground is shaking, the vibrations are not transmitted to the building. We can understand it like this, that if it is a conventional building without these bearings, then the building will be shaken severely. And even if the building withstands earthquake, all the equipment, services, furniture, water tank, those will get damaged. On the other hand, if the building is put on these base isolators, then the ground can move, but the vibrations transmitted to the building are much less. And as a result, all the equipment and services inside this building will be functional. So this is one of the methods. Now, if we look at displacement response spectrum, the shape which I have shown earlier, that was of acceleration response spectrum. So acceleration will reduce, but the displacement increases. So when we change the period from a short period to a long period, let us say original period in fixed base condition was 0.5, and when we put isolators, then it is 2 seconds, the displacement is going to increase. So when the structure becomes flexible, the displacement increases. But in case of this isolated building, all that displacement or most of that displacement occurs in these base isolators, which are designed to resist that type of displacement. So these can undergo that displacement without any damage, and the building is safe. So as the period is elongated, the acceleration goes on decreasing, the displacement goes on reducing. The interesting or the useful aspect of this is that this displacement can be concentrated in isolators. And these isolators, different types of isolators are available now. One such type is with laminated rubber and lead core. Then we have these friction pendulum type of isolators where we have this curved surface, and on this curved surface there is this slider, articulated slider. Sizes can be different. Here I have shown a large size uh, friction pendulum isolator, and as compared to a human being, you can see that scale of this. So sizes may be much larger, and it can be done even in case of existing buildings. The other technology which I want to talk uh, quickly is energy dissipation technology. So we um, help our structure to dissipate the energy, because as I explained that during earthquake, the earthquake is imparting energy to the structure, and the structure has to dissipate that energy through hysteresis. And hysteresis means that the structure will undergo damage. So if I provide some other means of dissipating that energy to the structure, then the structure will not require to get itself damaged. And this is something similar to the shock absorbers we are having in our cars or bikes. So you can see that in building also we can provide similar shock absorbers. Actually, these are called viscous fluid dampers. So inside these there is viscous fluid, and during earthquake, when the building is vibrating, the building is shaking, this fluid inside the thick oil which is inside that gets heated up, energy is dissipated, it absorbs the energy, and the vibrations of the building are reduced. So there are again different types of devices working on different principles. One of the principles is this viscous fluid and the dampers, which we get viscous fluid dampers. The another very commonly used methodology to dissipate energy is friction. So here you can see a friction damper, and this friction can be in the rotational form, it can be in the sliding form. So this is the sliding friction based damper, so where one plate will be rubbing the other plate and it will move during earthquake, and in the process of friction it will dissipate energy means that it will convert that into heat. Other types of dampers are also possible. For example, here we have this tuned mass damper. So in tuned mass damper, uh, a mass is suspended from the roof of the structure, and when the building is, let us say, vibrating towards right, this mass is vibrating towards left, and this is trying to pull the building back to its original position. So this can also absorb the energy from the building, and it can reduce the vibrations of the building. Now, the advantage of these dampers as compared to base isolators is that in case of base isolators, the displacement was also increasing. In case of dampers, these are the response spectra um, for acceleration, and we can look at the response spectra for displacement also. Here we are not changing the period, we are not elongating the period of the structure, the period remains same, but because of the damping, the response spectra get reduced, and as a result, when the damping is increased through these dampers, energy dissipation capacity of the structure is increased, the response reduces, and both acceleration response also reduces, the displacement response also reduces. So we control acceleration as well as displacement. So these are the two very upcoming and very promising technologies which are available, and using these technologies we can design our buildings not to get damaged during earthquakes. So that is possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your very interesting presentation. It got a little too technical. Thank you so much, sir. Is there any questions from the participant side? I know we are running out of time, but I think we can spare a couple of seconds for any question.
Yeah, so if there is any question, I will be happy to answer. So they're allowed to ask on microphone, or I should read from the question answer box?
There are no questions
Okay,
as of
okay,
now
good.
from the chat,
Fine.
and there are no
Good,
hands
so thank you.
raised for any questions, sir. Thank you so much for the presentation, and we are in the end of the session. And participants, if you have any questions, you can direct it to us or the speakers directly. We can ask them later to contact them for their email IDs or anything. So thank you so much for attending our webinar today. It was a very interesting session. More such sessions are waiting. We will meet you in other sessions, and we are also welcome to any feedback regarding the session or regarding any topics you would like to include in our upcoming webinars? So, I'm ending it now. Thank you so much, everyone.